Now I want to introduce to you Jean Diamond, who also has, quite a resume here, but I'm going to make it very brief. Jean has been a real leader in Catholic healthcare with the work he's done, as a hospital chief executive. He's currently with the Sisters of St. Francis Health Service incorporated in Mishawaka, Indiana, but you're not located in Mishawaka. But he's responsible for the northern Indiana region of this St. Francis Health Services, and he's been the chief executive officer since 2004. He's been an innovative executive with more than 30 years of progressive healthcare management experience and leadership responsibility in small and large community acute care hospitals and healthcare systems located in culturally diverse metropolitan neighborhoods. I don't think I need to say any more, but welcome, Jean Diamond.
It's a privilege to be with you all, and it's a real honor to be a member of a very distinguished faculty today. We've got quite a quest in front of us over the next half an hour or so. My staff back in Northwest Indiana is laughing gleefully because they don't think I can get through all these slides in the next 35 minutes or so. I think I'm probably going to be right, but I'm going to try as hard as I possibly can. And since I know that postprandial somnolence is about ready to set in, I don't mind if any of you fall asleep, but if you do start snoring, I'm probably going to kick you. Folks, for those of you who do sleep through this presentation, I can give you a brief summary of it right now, and that is there is no fundamental incompatibility between profession of our Roman Catholic faith and temporal success. Once again, no fundamental incompatibility between profession of our Roman Catholic faith, I emphasize our Roman Catholic faith, and temporal success. We are simply an illustration of that point. And you might ask yourself why I would ever do a presentation on this particular topic. It's because in 35 years of healthcare executive meanderings, having encountered many of my peers who felt as though it was one thing to pay a lip service to our values and another thing to actually embrace them, that I believe this is a message that needs to be sent and received by many folks. And I'm proud to work for what is now the Franciscan Alliance. You heard me introduced as a member of the Sisters of St. Francis Health Services, Inc. We have recently changed our name to Franciscan Alliance. Just about everybody in our markets called us the Franciscans anyway, so we decided we were going to update our identity, and we think it's going to help us facilitate more relationships with physicians, as well as with some of the health initiatives that we're talking about now. I do not happen to agree with everything that Father Brian Harris has to say, the very famous Jesuit, but I think he got it right when he said, as he did here, if one seeks to influence, shape, direct, heal, elevate, and enrich a complex industrial democracy, it cannot be done simply by the integrity of individual witness. It's done by institutions that lay hands on life at the critical points where people are born and die, where they learn and teach, where they're cured and healed, and where they are assisted when they're in trouble. Again, I think he got it exactly right. We are not triumphal in Franciscan Alliance. We are not pious. We engage the culture where we find it, and I hope during the next several minutes to be able to point that out to you. How do you identify a Catholic institution? Well, we think it can be identified very simply by these three factors: profession of faith, sacraments, and ecclesiastical governance. The first indication of our values can be seen in this particular photo, which is of our sisters, the religious sisters of St. Francis of Perpetual Adoration, Immaculate Heart of Mary Province. Note that they are wearing habits. Note, too, that there are several young sisters in that photo. Our sisters, like every religious order, are experiencing a general decline in their numbers. However, I'm pleased to say that there are new novices and postulants coming into our order every year. And in fact, what we're finding is that young women who are interested in religious community life are attracted to the ministry of the sisters. We're finding very successful young women who find that something is missing in their lives, and they've decided to choose this particular order. It's a source of great comfort to them. This is how our system is organized. Franciscan Alliance there at the bottom is the health system. The Sisters of St. Francis of Perpetual Adoration, I'll get back to that in a few minutes, are the member corporation, as religious sponsors. They report to the Sacred Congregation for Religious in Rome, and that is our identity. Our healthcare ministry began in 1875. We were incorporated in 1974 as a system, as a health system. Our corporate office is located in Mishawaka, Indiana. Most of you here probably don't know where that is, but it may help to know that it's not far from South Bend, where the University of Notre Dame is located. I mentioned to our folks that they should list the number of employees we had. I said it's around 16,000. They corrected me, it's 15,820. So I wanted to make sure I let you know that. For those of you who are geographically challenged, this is where we're located. And yes, I did turn those states blue because that is in fact what the outcome of our last presidential election was. Both of those states, believe it or not, the People's Republic of Illinois, where, by the way, our governors make our license plates, and Indiana, both went blue in the last election. This is where we are located. For those of you who need a little bit better sense, a more focused sense of it, to the north there is Lake Michigan, which is a very large body of water, I might add. To the left is the state of Illinois. The area is shaded in brown. The upper right-hand corner is Michigan, and right smack in the middle of that slide is the state of Indiana, where most of our ministry is located. We have 13 or 14 hospital campuses. We are actually in the process of closing one and moving some of our folks to another hospital now. So depending on what time of the week or time of the day it is this week, we either have 14 or 13 hospital campuses. We are a multi-function system. We own, among other things, a clinical laboratory, an information service, a construction company, believe it or not, which builds all of our buildings. We own a managed care plan. We also own a university. We have a small university that the Sisters of St. Francis own and operate, and we have a formal legal affiliation with a medical school, Midwest University, in both Chicago and Glendale, Arizona. It's an osteopathic school of medicine. Once again, that's where we're located. This is a brief overview of our financial profile. Again, the point I'm trying to make here is that there is some temporal success that we can point to. Our system generates revenues in the neighborhood of about $2.1 billion. Our operating margin is right around 5%, which is considered pretty respectable in healthcare these days. We have relatively low debt, about 38%, and quite a bit of money in cash on hand, quite a few days in cash on hand, closing in on 300. We are rated AA by the bond houses Fitch and Moody's, the two big bond rating agencies. AA is basically about the highest rating you can get in healthcare. There are, of course, AAA agencies out there, but in healthcare, AA is considered very respectable, and we are AA with a stable outlook, which we expect to improve over the next year or so. We also devote considerable percentage of our revenues to community benefits, charity in particular. Even though that number has remained steady over the past couple of years or so, actually 3 years or so, we have seen that other systems, given the poor economy, have begun to pass us by. And so our performance has been pretty consistent, but whereas before we were ranked probably in the top 25%, a number of hospital systems over the past couple of years or so have passed us up, which again we think is a reflection of the fact that the economy is deteriorating. This is the northern Indiana region. There are 4 hospitals, 5 hospital campuses. My office, by way of illustration, is located about 35 minutes from downtown Chicago. I can literally be sitting in an office in downtown Chicago in about 35 minutes. So that's basically where I'm located. Our diocese is Gary, Indiana. Our ordinary is Dale Melchick. Our catchment area, as I mentioned earlier, includes parts of the states of Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan. We literally have facilities in all 3 of those states. And the total population we serve is about 1 million. For those of you who are not familiar with Gary, it is a major industrial steel-making area. Those of you here in San Francisco are used to fog. We are used to smog. We don't like air that we can't taste, feel, and chew. So that's Gary. This is where some of our facilities are located. The map depicts an area that is roughly 50 miles left to right and 50 miles north and south. We affectionately refer to it as the far-flung empire. There are about 50 facilities there, including, as I mentioned earlier, the 5 hospital campuses. And as you can see there, way up in the corner of that, right there is where we have one of our offices in Michigan. Here's just a depiction of the offices. Here is the landscape. As you can see, that air in northwest Indiana can be seen and chewed and actually be held in your hands on certain days. It's in primarily urban industrial to the north, bucolic farmland to the south, and there are also beautiful recreational areas around Lake Michigan. It is really a fabulous place to be in the summertime. You don't want to be there in the wintertime, but it's a fun place to be in the summer. Here's a little bit about our makeup, our demographics. About 1,600 or 1,700 licensed beds, about 132,000 emergency room visits, just under 38,000 admissions, about 2,500 births. We're hoping that that's going to go up. We've got just under 6,000 employees. Once again, my very meticulous auditor wanted me to be specific in saying it's not 6,000 employees, as you all always say, it's 5,856 employees. So I want to make sure I get that message out. We have more than 300 employed physicians. This slide says that we have 278. That's the folks who are in our MSO. We actually have a large number of employed physicians, anesthesiologists, emergency physicians, et cetera, who are not part of the MSO. And we have a lot of residents and interns running around. That number is actually a little bit dated. Mostly osteopathic interns and residents. We also have a few fellows and some residents from the Indiana University School of Medicine. Here's our payment makeup, our payer makeup, very comparable to what you're going to see in many regions of the country. A lot of Medicare, a lot of Medicaid, a considerable amount of Medicaid to the north, and a lot of self-pay. Most of our hospitals in the northern part of our region are very heavily dependent upon government payers. As a region, we're probably up in the neighborhood of about 65 to 70% if you include government payers as well as patients. But we do have a substantial proportion, believe it or not, of managed care patients, including a Medicaid managed care product in the state of Indiana. We have the same kind of clinical services that many of your hospitals have. All of our hospitals have open heart surgery. All of them have, for example, fully accredited rehabilitation programs managed by the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago, which is considered one of the best in the country, and any number of other typical services that you're going to see in a community hospital setting. We have a large number of off-site facilities, which include, as you can see, outpatient diagnostic centers, outpatient surgery centers. We have a couple of large health clubs that operate 24 hours a day. We have home health offices, a large number of physician offices. And we also manage, as you can see here, some indigent clinics, which I'll be talking about in a little while. We have the usual accreditations and recognitions that many hospitals and hospital systems have. Health grades rates us very highly. In our region, our hospitals are considered among the best in the region, regularly winning awards for excellence, et cetera. Very typical of your community hospital situation. Here are some of our local recognitions from local business magazines, best health and fitness clubs, best hospitals, best urgent care facilities. In fact, earlier this week, our hospitals were named one of the best employers in Northwest Indiana. Now let's get into mission. We've talked a little bit about temporal success. I think you can see that, at least as far as we're concerned, we possess it. It's a constant struggle, obviously, and we're very worried about it in the context of health reform. But now we get into mission. As you know, our organization is sponsored by the Religious Sisters of St. Francis of Perpetual Adoration. The order was founded in 1863 by Mother Teresa Bonzel, Venerable Mother Teresa Bonzel. She found very soon after she started the order that because of Bismarck's Kulturkampf in Germany, where she had founded the order, that she could no longer minister to Catholics and the needy. So they looked for another place to send their sisters and eventually settled in Indiana. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. This is our mission statement, very simple, continuing Christ ministry in our Franciscan tradition. Every single employee who is hired by our organization, interviewed by our organization, oriented by our organization, evaluated by our organization, is expected to have that mission, vision, and value statement with them at all times. Mine is a little dog-eared at this stage of the game. You're expected to know that mission statement, you're expected to know the Franciscan values, and you're expected to be able to practice those Franciscan values, and you're evaluated on those Franciscan values and held accountable for those Franciscan values. And wrong way here. There we go. These are the Franciscan values: respect for life, fidelity to our mission, compassionate concern, joyful service, and Christian stewardship. As we say in our system about Christian stewardship, we are Franciscans. We do it the cheap way. The core of our mission, our spiritual care services. This is where our identity, our culture is made. A number of recurring programs that we will not have a chance to go into in depth here, but some of them were actually begun by our employees, and that's very important for you to understand, because when I talk about the mission of the organization as well as the Franciscan values and inculcating it into folks very early on during the recruiting process and continuing right through their tenure with the system, we expect them to manifest the Franciscan values. And so, for example, our spiritual companions for the sick involves a number of employees who volunteered to sit with patients who routinely do not get visitors. Our employees, and this included housekeepers and maintenance folks, noticed there were a number of patients who came into the hospitals on a consistent basis who didn't have visitors. They volunteered on their own time to sit with those patients, to provide them with companionship. The other program we have, let me go back here, is the No One Dies Alone program. Our employees also noticed that there were patients coming in from nursing homes who didn't have any visitors at all. These tended to be folks who were very severely disabled, very, very aged, who subsequently died alone. Our employees, again, volunteered on their own time to spend time with those patients, hold their hands until the moment of death. So that, again, is part of the mission of this organization. There's a lot of mission focus here: anointing of healers, memorial services for the bereaved, daily mass in our chapels. The Angelus is prayed in several of our hospitals. We're turning that into a regional initiative. Sorry, I keep getting lost here. We bless and dedicate everything. You can't walk through the place without seeing some kind of a message that says, and you can see the holy water font right here. It talks about the latest blessing that's coming out. People are expected to attend the blessings and often do. We have chapels in all but one of our locations. One of our hospitals, it was formerly physician-owned. It didn't have a chapel. We are now raising money to put a chapel in that facility. And folks, this is the center of the presentation. For those of you who ever wonder how and why it happens that an organization can stay true to its mission and its values for such a sustained period of time, my theory is that it's adoration. As I mentioned earlier, our religious order is the Sisters of St. Francis of Perpetual Adoration, and by perpetual adoration we mean perpetual adoration. They are in the Adoration Chapel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They are praying for you right now. And we tell our employees, our patients, our physicians, etc., if you wake up in the middle of the night with some kind of a sorrow or a concern, etc., shift it over to the sisters. There's one of them sitting in the chapel in Mishawaka before the monstrance there. And in fact, that sister will be praying for your intentions. We do adoration in our Northern Indiana region chapels throughout the week. We don't have perpetual adoration there, but we do in fact have adoration throughout the week. And it's, again, my sense that adoration is the source of, if you will, the engine room that generates all those graces that help us to stay pretty focused on what we need to do. We have a fairly busy Mass schedule in our chapels. We have lots of visual reminders of our faith throughout the institutions. Some of you, in fact, I was telling Tim Mandolan earlier that I had a conversation with Shannon McGinley in New Hampshire earlier this week. I was being asked to help a hospital seek a new Catholic chief executive officer. And one of the things I told them was that they needed to find a Roman Catholic CEO, not an American Catholic CEO. And there was the understandable laughing that went on in the background. And after the conversation was over, Shannon said they didn't understand what the difference was between a Roman Catholic and an American Catholic. I said, well, that's the problem. We make it pretty clear that we are Roman Catholic order. That's the Vatican flag that hangs outside of all of our hospitals. So we make it pretty clear that we are Roman Catholic. We also, I don't have time to talk about this now, but we also, as I said earlier, engage the culture. That, and I think I've mentioned this to some of the folks in this audience before, that cross is right out in front of our South Campus of St. Margaret in Dyer, Indiana. It is the direct result of a protest that was mounted by the atheists in Munster, Indiana, who removed, under court order, a cross from a local park. It caused a great deal of consternation on the part of the folks in the facility, I beg your pardon, in the area. And so, although I was new to the area at the time, I didn't know about the controversy. But having sat over lunch and listened to some of the folks talking about it, I decided that what we would do is post a cross on our property, made sure that it was just inside our property line on Route 30, where about 10,000 cars an hour go by. And I said, we're going to do the atheist one better. We're going to put a corpus on that cross. So there's no question whatsoever why that cross is there and what it's intended to say. As I've mentioned to some folks in the room before, I am sustained by my hate mail. And I got a letter from a woman who was ferociously angry that this cross was posted at such a public location, and she insisted that she was going to get a court order and have it taken down. And I was so tempted to let her do that, to have her spend all of her money, her hard-earned money, to find out that it was on our property and there was nothing she could do about it. But one of the things she wrote in her letter was that when she was extremely aggravated in passing the cross on her way to work every day, the only thing that consoled her was that she came home at night, it was dark, and she couldn't see it. So yeah, I put a floodlight on it. Yeah. So you can see it there. You can't miss it. More depictions of our religious art. We have bronze statues of the Spirit of St. Francis outside of all of our hospital campuses. And let me pause on this for just a second to talk about it. I want to make sure I'm running close to my deadline here. It is a policy of the Sisters of St. Francis that all of their board members and all of their executives go to Assisi on a pilgrimage. So all of us, all of our board members, as well as the top executives, and we're now moving into upper management, go to Assisi on pilgrimages. I've actually been to Assisi, I think it's now 3 times on pilgrimages. It's, of course, a wonderful experience for those of you who have been there. There's a huge investment in making sure that we understand how important St. Francis is to this ministry. And so we spend about 10 days following the footsteps of Francis, not only through Assisi, but into Rome and some of the other places where he stopped and lived, etc. So, for example, we spend time in Greccio. We go to Mount Laverna. We go all over the places that Francis visited and lived. And one of the things that came from that experience was that some of the employees who had been there insisted that we start hanging San Damiano crucifixes in all of our patient rooms. We had always had crucifixes in all of our patient rooms, but we began hanging San Damiano crucifixes in all of our patient rooms. So now throughout our system, you will find in both meeting rooms and in our patient rooms, San Damiano crucifixes. They've actually become popular with our patients. Some of our patients steal them, I'm sorry to say. But we also began selling them in some of our gift shops. They actually do sell. And it's a wonderful symbol of our values, and this is one of the main corridors of St. Margaret Hospital in Hand. We have a number of indigent clinics that serve the medically indigent, not simply the poor, but the medically indigent. That's our special charism as far as we're concerned. There are plenty of places where the indigent can go to be cared for, including our hospitals. But these clinics are for the medically indigent, the people who are working poor, who do not have health care. And so as you can see, we have a beautiful facility. This is in Crown Point, which was raised, the money for which was raised in a capital campaign, staffed by volunteer physicians. This is the indigent clinic for St. Margaret. Our hospital formerly had a relationship with the Mercy Sisters, and when they left, they contributed a gift to us to support the indigent clinic, and so we named it in their honor. But it is a clinic for the medically indigent in these communities, and it is famously popular with folks in the community. As many of you know, there have been many initiatives, including President Bush's Faith-Based Initiatives Office, which tried to draw attention to the need for abstinence education. Sad to say, most of the faith-based initiatives have gone away. Some of the state-based grants for Respect Life and Project Respect have disappeared with time. Many of those are, as you know now, subject to criticism from the left. But we have been in this business for closing in on about 20 years. Before many of those grants began to be popular, we've continued doing this work because we think it's extremely important in our communities. We do it on our own without any grants. This is a billboard on the right from our community, which talks about our program, and of course a brochure. We have a full-time educator who's out every week spending time in classrooms with kids. Although probably few of you can see this, folks closer to it can see it. We do all sorts of Project Respect type teaching. And the interesting thing about this slide, the reason for including it, is because all of the teaching that's being done by Angie Early, who's our instructor, is in public schools. It's in public schools. So we are being called by the public school teachers who are saying, we need our kids, and public school administrators saying, we need our kids to get some kind of values. And they know that our program does not heavily emphasize Roman Catholic values. It's simply a respect program, teaching folks about the importance of abstinence, etc. So in this month of January of this year, Angie, spending about 35 hours a week, taught about 2,600 students these programs, and she does this all year long. And she's not the only one who does it. We have another teacher in Michigan City, about 45 minutes away from our western border, and another teacher in Crown Point who does this. And we spend most of our time, believe it or not, in the public schools doing this kind of teaching. We think, again, it's part of our mission, it's part of our ministry, and again, we're engaging the culture. We think it's very important to engage the culture. Another example of engagement, one of our nursing leaders believed very strongly that with respect to victims of sexual assault, that our ministry to those folks could be enhanced. We insist, of course, that we are not going to refer folks to any organization where they can get post-rape contraception. She put together a program to train our nurses to be sexual assault nurse examiners. We then dedicated a facility in one of our emergency rooms to this particular ministry. It's now spreading to the other hospitals in the region. We got the Lake County, Indiana prosecutor to agree with us that we could structure this program, and we didn't have to insist upon sending or giving victims referrals to Planned Parenthood, etc., for contraception. The prosecutor was happy to make that compromise with us because the center is so well organized and so helpful to the victims. We bring in behavioral therapy folks for the victims. We do an excellent job of collecting evidence. We make excellent witnesses in prosecutions. But the Lake County prosecutor was happy to make the compromise with us and allow us to have this program and to refer sexual assault victims to us for this kind of treatment. It was all the result of the lady who was sitting there who said, we just need to do a better job of this and make sure that we are ministering to the whole needs, the entire needs of these victims. And so, to her credit, it's worked out quite well. We have a home for pregnant adolescents. We have any number of young women in our community who are turned away from their homes or can't live at home anymore once their parents or their family members find out they're pregnant. We keep them for up to a year, including after the time they've had their babies. We insist that they continue in school. We insist that they get a job. We insist that they get regular instruction on how to care for the baby both before it's born and after it's born. We have a number of alums who continue to come back and visit us, and we're almost on the verge of having one of our first children born in the home come and start working at the hospital. So, Respect Life Month week is very big for us, as you're about ready to see. We have any number of things we do during Respect Life Month. One of the things we do that some of you may have even heard about is we have our engineering staff drill about 4,000 holes in the lawns of some of our hospitals. Then we invite local school kids to come out. The bishop presides over the ceremony here. The school kids are then invited to take those crosses and plant them in the ground. We then release biodegradable balloons. We don't want to do anything that's politically incorrect. So we release biodegradable balloons, pink and blue balloons, by the way. 4,000 of them. We seem to always have a beautiful day to do it. The photos are generally picked up by the media. Here's a photo from America magazine of one of our recent pro-life ceremonies. This was the photo from the local newspaper last year. We had 600 school children who came out and participated. And the interesting thing about this is that we now have about 5 local facilities that are actually displaying these crosses during Respect Life Month. 3 of our hospital campuses, a large medical clinic that we bought last year, and a local Reformed church have now begun displaying the crosses during Respect Life Month. So you can literally drive in a very large circle in our area and never lose sight of these crosses, which are constantly displayed in the community. I don't know if that's typical of your community, but that's something that we do. I understand the laughter. We include mission in many of our ads. Each one of these ads ends with, I am a Franciscan physician and I walk in the footsteps of St. Francis. I'm a Franciscan nurse and I walk in the footsteps of St. Francis. I'm a Franciscan sister and I walk in the footsteps of St. Francis. And we use our mission in all of our ads. We emphasize how important it is that people have to understand that mission is a very important component. Our spiritual companions I talked to you about before. This Volunteers for Advocates for Seniors program came about because, again, one of our executives found that a number of people in our community who came into the hospital without relatives frequently ended up having decisions made for them, healthcare decisions being made for them at the end of life that were incompatible with our values. So what he did was he went out and gathered up a number of attorneys as well as the local judges, got them to agree that we could set up a system under which our employees could become their guardians on a temporary basis. It required the state of Indiana legislature to pass a law to implement it in our community. The Indiana House passed it unanimously, the Indiana Senate passed it unanimously, the governor signed it. It's been amended several times since then. Each time it's done, is passed unanimously. The program is now moved throughout the entire state. And it started with one of our employees who said, we just feel that we need to have some way of being able to protect these patients' best interests when they're near death. We don't want them to have to go to a public guardian who could decide, for perhaps his own reasons, that they shouldn't be hydrated, they shouldn't be nourished, they shouldn't be maintained on a ventilator, etc. So this program was intended to address that. I mentioned earlier that we do a blessing of the hands ceremony, we do May crownings, we do retreats for folks. We had a number of our patients come to us sometime after they had delivered babies stillborn or have had miscarriages. It's our custom to make sure that those remains are buried in sacred ground. But we had a number of patients come to us years after the fact and say, I would like to know where my baby is buried. And so, again, with the inspiration of some of the folks in the local diocese as well as the cemeteries and some of our volunteers, we were able to erect a statue and a memorial area for the remains of miscarried fetuses. It's now spread throughout the diocese, and there are any number of these in the diocesan cemeteries. We memorialize our foundresses each All Souls Day, and we ask our employees to send us photos of the nativity scenes from local churches in our community, Catholic or non-Catholic. It's a competition. The person who sends us the one that we decide to put in our annual Christmas ad here is recognized for that. And each year our regional Christmas card features the ad that appears in the newspaper. It's gotten to be kind of a popular feature in our community, and again, it's another way of manifesting our values. We honor and embrace the religious and ethical directives. All of our contracts contain language which makes it clear to folks that we are going to embrace the religious and ethical directives. And you would think after all this time, we've been doing this for 137 years, that the people in the community would understand this and wouldn't necessarily give us a hard time about it. But believe it or not, last week, as I was putting together this presentation, we ran into an attorney for Porter County, one of the counties that we serve, saying that she was not going to include our managed care language in the contract. We were able to overcome her resistance, and the next thing that's going to happen to her is that I'm going to go out and meet with her. Again, this is consistent with our philosophy, which is to engage. Bill Cox talked a little bit about engaging our respectful opponents. This is going to be a case where I'm going to go out and meet with this attorney, sit down and talk to her about why it happens to be that she doesn't think that we should have this language in our managed care contracts with our employees. I'm in a better position to do that because the Porter County supervisors overrode her wishes and said we want to have this contract more than we want to exclude this clause. So we're going to enter into this relationship, but I need to have a dialogue with her to understand where she's coming from. So that will be, again, part of our engagement process. All of our physician employment agreements contain language which specifically references the ethical and religious directives. We give everybody copies of those religious and ethical directives, and we link them to the religious and ethical directives in the body of the contract. We also tell them that if you don't follow the religious and ethical directives, you are going to lose your job. And we tell them that if they insist that they have to administer contraceptives, etc., that they're going to have a limited private practice in which they do this with language that the National Catholic Bioethics Center has specifically approved. These are some of the recent challenges we're involved in, fetal care being one of the big ones, pulse orders, another one that we're trying to manage, physician orders for life-sustaining treatment. Artificial contraception remains a constant issue for us to contend with. It never seems to go away. We do have lots of policies, ethical policies. This is extrauterine or intrauterine pregnancy, I should say. We do not use methotrexate on a live developing fetus. We do not do salpingostomies, we do salpingotomies. We also have a pretty aggressive policy on nutrition and hydration. We do not withdraw nutrition and hydration from patients who are not dying. During the Terry Scheibel matter, the local paper decided to run a headline above the fold based on an interview they had with me that we wouldn't have pulled the tube on Terry Scheibel, and it resulted in quite a controversy in our community. But it did result in a number of patients saying they would prefer to come to our hospital because at least they unfortunately, I've gotten myself into trouble with the local newspapers for having to excuse physicians who, despite repeated counseling, wouldn't observe our policies. But ultimately, that same paper editorialized that it was a decision that was proper for us to make. This was a comment that appeared in one of the issues of Literature Quarterly back in August of 2001. I won't summarize it, I won't read it to you, other than to say the physician who wrote this, a good man I'm sure, was basically questioning whether big urban hospitals, Catholic hospitals, made any sense anymore. Basically believing that so many hospitals had lost, Catholic hospitals had lost their way, that it probably didn't make any sense. And then came healthcare reform. As some of you know, we were very, very supportive of the bishops during the healthcare reform debate. We encouraged our employees on our intranet site to get involved and to protest. When the bill passed anyway with the support of Sister Carol Keehan and the CHA, we withdrew from the CHA and asked for our recess. We're still waiting for that check to clear, by the way. When the Contraceptive Mandate first became an issue earlier this year, I found myself dragged into the controversy again. This is really the great position for me to be in, because at the top of this article we have Sister Carol Keehan saying how pleased she was with the mandate accommodation, and below it you have me saying we shall not comply. The mandate would require us to pay for employee access to these procedures, which we find morally objectionable. We cannot and will not do it. So it was kind of an interesting counterpoint, resulted in a lot of violate in the community. And by the way, for the benefit of Dana Cody, we've made the decision we are going to jail. Our CEOs have decided as a group that we are in fact going to go to jail. The sisters have taken a position, obviously, in opposition to the mandate and the accommodation. Our president, Kevin Leahy, who I love dearly, who I've known for many, many years, found himself pulled into a debate with Sister Anna Marie Sanders of the Leadership Conference for Women Religious when she also came out in support of the mandate accommodation. He was beside himself over this, wrote her a letter, which he's still waiting for a response to as well. And somehow it ended up being released to the press, so it too got a lot of attention. Our hospital association, which I'm a member of the board, along with one of our CEOs, has recently, believe it or not, and I think it's the only hospital association in the country, gone on record supporting our position in this respect. So the Indiana Hospital Association, through its board of trustees, actually issued a letter encouraging Secretary Sebelius to respect our values in that respect, which we do. At the same time that this is all going on, one of our hospitals, in fact our whole system really is qualified for the Medicare Pioneer ACO pilot program. And so we have inserted into our agreement with the federal government that managed care language about religious and ethical directives. It's right there in our commitment to the Medicare Pioneer ACO. We have contacted the people from the Pioneer program and specifically asked them about our conscientious objector status, and basically have said to us in response, we don't provide an explicit conscientious objection protection. So what we're in the process of doing is gearing up for that fight as well. And so that's basically where we stand with respect to change. It's a short trip from riding the waves of change to being torn apart by the jaws of defeat. Change, it's never too late to turn over a new leaf unless you're really, really old and close to the end. Then, yeah, it's probably too late. And then finally, when the winds of change blow hard enough, the most trivial of things can turn into deadly projectiles. Again, I'll leave it at that because I've reached probably the end of my time, but I appreciate the time.